Sul, hello, and Lavis. Thank you for joining me on the speed build of a medieval home for Yelu of Narva, a chronicler, and his wife, Oshra. They're both characters in my Ultimate Decades challenge, and this house is for them. The two of them have the chance to grow quite a large household together. They have a large number of baby tries, so it was important to make sure that their house was big enough for everyone to fit in, but also maneuverable with that many Sims running around, which is why it takes a moment to get the layout proportioned. It also takes a moment to get the wood tones to be ones that I'm happy with. I like to have the idea that the woods may have been collected from trees that are in the same area potentially, and so it takes a while to choose wood tones that I think are an accurate or good fit for that kind of idea. Off to the side here, I'm building what will become an office for Yelu because as somebody who wants to be a chronicler, I thought it might be nice for him to have some space away from his future children. And I'm using that cottage living door because while wreath making for holiday purposes still wasn't a thing yet, it just has such nice details and the wood looks so nice that it's hard to ignore that item in historical builds. I'm also making a lot of use of those slatted windows from the Desert Luxe kit because this family lives in an area that is surrounded by 3 different armies at this point in time. And so while it might be more realistic to have less windows, I like those because they imply kind of the idea of a defensive structure, but also sort of provide light so that it's a bit more playable, nice to play in. Since Yelu is a tradesperson, he might be more wealthy than most of the Sims, and so that's why they're getting sort of a wood and wattle wall from Horse Ranch. And that's why as well they have a rich wood for their upstairs floor and ceilings, even though they have the traditional dirt floor on the bottom. Next, I'm trying to use candles on shelves to light the bathroom, but it is so difficult finding items that fit on shelves in my experience, and so it takes quite a while and they're still pretty dark. But their bathroom is sort of separated in 2 separate rooms so that one person can be using the chamber pot while somebody else is using the bathtub. And that way, even though they could have a potentially quite large family, hopefully it's a bit more playable for that many Sims in one space, although we all know how the Sims do. They like to gather in bathrooms, don't they? I'm also using a set of 2 ovens, both from Sims vs. Medieval Ovens that work with the Yield Cookbook mod, because it just looks a little bit different and it gives a different sort of personality to this house rather than using one of those bigger ovens that I would usually use. Next, of course, I'm going through and pulling out decor items that I think might look good for this time period, including debug items, including CC. It's kind of just a pull from everywhere. A lot of the CC items that I use a lot are linked in my mods document. It's a work in progress, so it gets updated intermittently as I remember to do it or check that those links still work. But these are just a bunch of items that I think might represent the lives that they live, including Yelu being a tradesperson, and the collectibles that he might have gathered over his life, or his parents were also tradespeople who came, they were transported here by the Mongolian Empire. So it's kind of this idea that they might have brought stuff with them when they were transported here, as well as they might have picked things up through people that they traded with over time. And then once I've got sort of a good idea of what items I might be using, that's when I start to sort them. It's just easier for me to be able to see them all before starting to sort them. This shelf is from Lily's Palace, and it's beautiful, and it also has a lot of slots for different decor items. And so I'm using it as kind of a pantry for things that we might want close to the kitchen or things that have been preserved either through pickling or through salting or whatever, so that it's right there in the entryway on your way to the kitchen, but not exactly in the kitchen, just to save some space and also to add some more visual appeal. It might be annoying to play with just because it's quite a tall object and it blocks the bathroom, but that's easy enough to work around if you don't like it there. In terms of finding counters for the kitchen, it's always a real challenge because all of the EA ones look a bit too modern. Like these horse ranch ones are great, but the detail on the handles and the clasps, it's just a bit too modern. Most people wouldn't have had things like that, and if they did, it wouldn't have been that nice, but it's a good option if you don't have any CC options. Luckily, in terms of tables, though, there are so many tables that are available. I've gone with the CC one just because I like the wood texture, Off to that side there's that big horse ranch barrel and then a CC sink that kind of matches it really nicely. It looks really good together, I think. So it's kind of like maybe they've gathered some water that they brought in to use in the sink area. This little corner of the hallway is going to be kind of a space for Oshra. She wants to be a mead maker. And so she has her honey press inside so that at least part of the work she can do inside. And we're using those barrels again just to indicate that maybe she's collecting some of her ingredients. And then I've placed the big mead boiler outside, but we'll return to that in a moment. While in the meantime, I'm looking for sort of a bench or a couch that the family can sit on and just placing some children's toys around so that the children have something to do while their parents are busy working downstairs. Off in the office, it takes me a ton of time to find a desk for Yelu because they're all either too big or too modern, or there's something about them that just doesn't fit right for me. And so it takes quite a long time. There are so many options in the game that are really good if you can look past the little details. And sometimes I can, and sometimes it just really gets under my skin. So I've ended up going with the CC one because I think the size of it's quite good. It fits a lot of decor items, and it sort of like lends itself well to the purpose that I'm looking to use it for. And then I'm just sort of putting all of these collectibles up on there, collectibles that Yelu's gathered over time, some of the books that he might have gotten, some little gold pouches, maybe he got some jewelry at some time, and sort of trying to make it look like a space he might interact with pretty frequently, while also leaving room for this really amazing parchment computer from Jane Simpson. The animations for this thing are incredible. There's going to be a little clip of it at the end of Yelu using it, and you'll see it works like a computer, but the animations are all custom so that it looks like they're actually writing with a parchment and quill, and it's amazing. If you can use CC, you would love this piece in your game. Next, it's on to the eternal issue of lighting and historical challenges. And I've put some candles down, but I'm also looking for a wall lamp. Because these guys aren't the main family, they can use electricity objects. They're not an off-the-grid household, just because in your side households in Ultimate Decades, it can be a little bit tough to manage all of that all of the time because you're not there enough. So I'm using a mixture of off-the-grid lights as well as lights that use electricity but look like they might fit for this time period. And I think that means that you can see a lot more clearly at nighttime, but it also gives the same vibe that I'm kind of looking for. Upstairs, since they're a little bit wealthier, I'm looking for a nicer bed and end up landing on this base game bed. It has a really nice wood texture that I think works quite well, and it looks a bit fancier than what most of my Sims have, but not too fancy or too modern. And then just sort of trying to make it into a space that also, again, has some light that looks like it might have fit for this time or might have been collectibles gathered by Yelu or his family over their course of time trading. And then, of course, just adding in the necessities, baby bassinet, infant crib, checking to see if I can cover up that white part on the stairs because it bothers me. And then eventually using these Journey to Batu lights as overhead lights. They're a little bit elaborate, but I kind of like them in this space. Before going to the bottom layer, the bottom floor, and putting the top layer of straw or hay, which was used a lot of the time to cover up the base layer of the floor in this period. And I don't put too much, I just put a little bit so that we have the idea of it. That object that's like the crates on the inside, if you get a mod by Ravasheen called Hoarders Synonymous, it basically works as another storage that keeps your items fresher for longer. So it kind of works like a refrigerator, but it's off the grid, and that makes it a really useful item. Then, of course, outside, I'm just sort of starting to work on placement of different items, adding in some trees, but not too many because I don't want them to get in the way of my view, but still it should kind of look like it belongs here. I tend to use the bug trees because I just think that it's easier. And then I'm also going to add some mining rocks from Jane Simpson's blacksmithing mod. They're fantastic items. In historical gameplay, we often do need some animals around, and so I've just kind of put those close to the house, especially the chicken coop, because I don't know about for anybody else, but for me, the chickens have been just wandering off like crazy lately. They'll end up in completely the wrong place. I don't know why they go there or how they go there, but they'll get all the way out in the neighborhood and then not be able to find their way back and complain about it constantly. As for terrain paint, it's always a challenge. It never looks quite right to me. If you have any tips, let me know, because it's something I always struggle with. But the easiest part is definitely that chicken area, because chickens tend to rip up everything on the ground around them from pecking at the ground. And so I just kind of went all in on that idea. The rest of it, I think, is like a good attempt, but it's always just too dark to my eye, you know, the way that terrain paint comes out. So I do try to blend it in, but I don't put that much landscaping around, again, because I like to be able to see things, and also because it costs money and these families aren't super wealthy. So there's not so much terrain to help blend it in, and it's just the paint there. Next, it's on to roofs, and I end up using the Island Living roofing. I think that the thatch on that always looks really nice, and the roof trim blends in really nicely. I always want to use the Cottage Living one, but something about it just doesn't look right. Something about the way that the roof trim fits with the roof just never really matches what I think it should. And then that's it, pretty much done. So here we are. We have this massive square rectangular building. Most houses wouldn't have been 2 stories like this in the way that we think of them, but this is kind of the only way to build loft spaces that doesn't waste a lot of space in The Sims. So this is what we have. Off to the side here, we've got our little hand wash station right as we come in. Then immediately, just in case of an emergency, there's a chamber pot, and then the bathtub. Always good to have one. Then off to the side, of course, we've got our little pantry full of all of our items. And on this top shelf, you can see this really amazing piece that comes with the Lily's Palace Folklore set. It's just the texture of that picture. It looks so time-worn. It looks so natural. It looks fantastic. You go straight into the kitchen, and you're lucky because you've got flowers that somebody picked for you, or maybe you picked for yourself. And it's right there cheering up your kitchen, helping you have a good day. Over here, we've got our little meat press station with our super cool light that was collected and traded for at some point. And then a chronicler's office full of all of the things that you might need, including other texts for reference or more quills for writing. Straight to the outside where your animals are gonna hang out, really close by to your bees for collecting honey, your garden patch, and a well, because that way you can save a ton of time and energy in terms of getting the water from the well to your mead brewer. Then if we go upstairs, we've got the whole family sleeping in one room together, which was pretty common. In fact, most people, I think, slept in one bed together. And you've got a nice view of the downstairs so that you can always keep an eye on your kids, or, you know, just have a really close family dynamic. So yeah, that's about the whole build. I hope that you've enjoyed this speed build, and look out for the next one, and I'll see you in the future. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye bye.